Well, let's catch you up now with the latest on the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial. One of the big developments earlier today was a decision by Judge Mawumela not to allow a watching brief by an attorney representing Kelly Khumalo. As you know, Kelly Khumalo was one of the people in the house on the night Meyiwa was murdered. Her attorney is Magdalene Munsami. She had been asked the court to be allowed in to watch the court proceedings. Ian Allis is a criminal law expert. He joins us now, an attorney. Ian, good afternoon to you, and thank you for your time. In the end, the judge ruled that Munsami is not allowed to be in the court. Why does this matter? I thought a court was a public place.
Okay. Good afternoon, Stephen. Good afternoon to the viewers. First off, if I could just explain briefly, there's this term being bandied around of a watching brief. Basically, if I could just take a second just to explain, a watching brief is an individual attorney who's appointed on behalf of a witness or a complainant to go ahead and observe the hearing itself and to play an observatory-based role. The only problem is that they also become privy to evidence, which in this situation, because Kelly Khumalo is a potential suspect in one docket and also a potential witness, could have an impact on what her testimony may well be in the situation. So what the whole issue is the worry about having that external intervention that may have a bearing on her testimony should it be given later on.
Is the other phrase that people use tailoring your evidence? If you know what other witnesses have said, you would tailor your evidence to fit their story.
Well, tailoring evidence is very difficult. It can be a very, very difficult task. It's the same idea that the coaching of evidence and coaching in testimony. In a situation like this where there's so much evidence and it's already so public, it kind of renders it all a little bit academic, because what you might not get from having an attorney in there observing, could end up coming out from the reporting, from articles, from everything like that. So all of the significant information is still being relayed in the process. The only thing it may have a differential role is if that person, as a watching brief, was going to play any specific role in the proceedings and interfere in the proceedings, which that would then go ahead and technically taint what evidence could be given and how it could be interpreted later on should Kelly Khumalo give her evidence.
I mean, this is one of those situations where you could argue it either way, couldn't you, Ian? I mean, on the one side, why should I not be allowed in court if it's on TV? On the other side, it's on TV. Why should you be allowed in court? You could go both ways with this.
Precisely, Stephen. That's my exact argument. It is all about basically perceptions in this, and there's nothing that she's going to tailor that's going to be different if she's not sitting there in court. The only consideration could have been is if there was going to be any type of directive to her watching brief to get involved and involve herself more in the proceedings, which then the judge could go ahead and raise at any given stage if he felt the person was crossing the boundary.
I mean, is this also one of these rules of court that maybe needs to be sort of re-examined because we're now in the television era? I mean, it's quite strange to me because I've watched this process, but 10 years ago, virtually no court cases were televised. Now it's become very common. Is this one of those rules of court that maybe needs to be re-looked at?
Oh, absolutely. Is to me, and obviously from my legal experience dealing with cases, I've noticed there's been a lot of different, when I've been involved in cases, involvement from different lobbying groups and people sitting there as having an observatory role. It's academic now in our open era, because what they're not going to report in one file swoop, they'll be able to report in another. So it's kind of obsolete, if one could actually say, at this point, if we have to go back to those rules. I could understand that 20-odd years ago, when, especially a case like this, there would be no reporting permitted inside the courtroom. There'd be no television cameras. Everything was, at best, a reporter sitting and writing it down on a sketch pad. Now they've got people basically recording it on devices, television cameras in there. different parties recording in different ways, transcription devices. The one thing with the Oscar Pistorius trial, it kind of blew open, if one could say, the fourth wall on how trials are actually conducted in South Africa, and it became a whole different open forum for debate and participation.
The other thing to do with what you describe, I think, quite nicely is the open era, is this documentary by the streaming service, the Netflix documentary, you know the one. And we have people, it seems, refusing to say how much money they got paid to basically speak to that documentary, to be interviewed. And this also, I mean, I'm aware there's some media organizations which have done this in South Africa in the past, but very few, to pay for an interview. You have someone who maybe received money, maybe they didn't. Now they're in court. I mean, it all gets a bit messy, doesn't it? I mean, does the fact that there's a documentary like this, I mean, I'm always going to fight for the right for anyone to produce a documentary. I'm a journalist. It's in my DNA. On the other hand, if I were the lawyers and the judge, I'd feel they muddy the water a little bit.
The problem that's actually happened is if one takes a look at the Senzo Meyiwa documentary as opposed to other documentaries, and I myself have also assisted as legal counsel from that point of view. They were all post the fact, post the trial and the incident, or at least basically during it. The Senzo Meyiwa matter opened up a different Pandora's box because the series was released prior to the trial actually commencing. And that is something that is important. So there's already been an impression, and I personally have watched the documentary series from a point of interest, and there is aspects that are put into different context and kind of boggles the mind about what really could have taken place when one looks at it from a journalistic point of view. It's very different to when one looks at it from a legal point of view or from the judicial perspective as to what one could actually expect, with a very different perceptions of interpretation. Is from an investigative journalistic approach, from the approach of the state attorney, from the approach of a defense attorney, as well as the approach of the judge and the interpretation for all of those. They don't automatically all have a happy marriage. And unfortunately, in a situation like this, a lot of information was released to the public well before the actual trialable issues became well known, and the actual evidentiary issues that are being presented at court were explained.
Ian Allis, thank you very much indeed. Really do appreciate it. Legal expert and attorney watching this case with us, with you, I should say.